I wake up every morning to the same infuriating sight. My driveway blocked, and not by a tree, a fallen branch, or even a neighbor's car, but by Karen. Yes, the infamous neighborhood Karen, who somehow believes the world revolves around her. Every single morning, without fail, she would park her oversized SUV directly in front of my gate, leaving me trapped. I'd honk, flash my lights, and even tried politely knocking on her door. But nothing worked. It was as if she took a sadistic pleasure in seeing me struggle. At first, I tried reasoning with her. "Karen, could you please move your car? I need to leave for work." Her response? A scoff, followed by the infamous, dismissive, "You can wait." Weeks turned into months, and the situation only escalated. I started recording videos as evidence, time-lapse, footage of her blocking my gate day after day. But this wasn't just a minor inconvenience anymore. It was affecting my entire routine, causing missed appointments and fraying my nerves. I tried involving my HOA. Surely there must be a rule about blocking driveways? But HOA responses were slow and bureaucratic. And by the time they replied, Karen would always have a new excuse or claim some right to park there. It felt like a never-ending battle. And I began wondering if this was going to continue forever. That's when I learned about fire lanes. The county had regulations to ensure emergency vehicles could always pass through. I realized maybe this was my opportunity, not to confront her directly, but to let the law work in my favor. I contacted the county, submitted my evidence, and requested an inspection. Within days, inspectors came and marked the area in front of my gate as a proper fire lane, officially off limits for parking. Karen's reaction? Oh, it was immediate. The first morning after the fire lane signs went up, she parked there anyway. I couldn't believe it. She had escalated her defiance to a whole new level, flaunting regulations like it was a badge of honor. But this time, I had backup, the law, the county, and the evidence she couldn't dispute. If you think Karen's antics stopped there, you're in for a twist. Wait until you hear what she tried next, and how the county handled it. The morning after the fire lane signs were installed, I braced myself for the inevitable. And there she was, Karen, smirking behind the wheel of her massive SUV, completely ignoring the bright red "No Parking Fire Lane" signs that now framed my driveway. I couldn't believe my eyes. After all the documentation, all the county inspections, and the official signage, she still thought she could get away with it. This wasn't just stubbornness anymore. It was outright defiance. I snapped a photo and started recording. I knew I needed every angle of evidence because now it wasn't just about inconvenience. It was about safety violations. Fire lanes exist for emergencies, not to give Karen a platform to assert control over her neighbors. I sent the evidence to the county, expecting some slow bureaucratic process, but to my surprise, they reacted immediately. A citation notice was issued, and I learned that repeated violations could lead to towing and fines that would make her think twice. But Karen isn't the kind to back down quietly. The next morning, she parked even closer to my gate, almost daring the county to enforce the law. Her friends from the neighborhood had started noticing the tension. Some whispered that she had a history of pushing boundaries. Others laughed at her audacity. I kept my cool, documenting everything, and tried to stay calm despite my frustration. The time-lapse camera I had set up became my silent ally, capturing each instance of her defiance with clarity that no argument could override. One afternoon, I received a call from the county inspector. They confirmed that any further violations would result in immediate towing, and they hinted they were prepared to act sooner rather than later. I felt a sense of relief, knowing the law was on my side, but the tension in the neighborhood grew. Karen started leaving passive-aggressive notes on my gate, claiming ownership of the space in front of my property. Some days she even shouted from her porch, daring me to call the cops or take it to court. It was clear that this battle had turned into a neighborhood spectacle, and I realized that I needed to be strategic. I couldn't let emotions dictate my actions, no matter how enraging her behavior was. I continued documenting, involved the county fully, and planned my next move carefully. The stakes had grown. This wasn't just about parking anymore. It was about principle, about safety, and about showing that one person's ego couldn't override the law. Little did Karen know, the next step in this saga would escalate faster than she imagined, testing her audacity in ways even she couldn't predict. The morning air felt heavier now. Karen wasn't just defiant, she was emboldened, and it seemed like the entire neighborhood had tuned in to watch. By this point, I had prepared for every scenario. The time-lapse cameras were strategically positioned to capture every angle of her parking antics, ensuring there would be no doubt about her violations. But what happened next was beyond anything I had anticipated. One Tuesday morning, Karen arrived earlier than usual, determined to make a statement. She parked directly in the middle of the newly designated fire lane, almost daring the county to enforce their rules. I calmly recorded, knowing that this day might mark the turning point. As she strutted back to her house, waving her arms like she owned the street, a county tow truck quietly rolled into view. I could hardly believe it. Finally, the law was about to take action. The tow truck driver stepped out, clipboard in hand, and started the process. Karen appeared from her porch in full protest mode, yelling at the driver, "You can't tow me! This is harassment!" Her voice carried down the street, drawing neighbors to their windows. Some laughed quietly, others shook their heads, but I stayed focused on recording everything. This wasn't about drama. It was about ensuring compliance with safety regulations and finally putting an end to months of harassment. As the tow truck began hooking her SUV, Karen escalated further, trying to block the process by standing in front of the vehicle. I stayed back, documenting everything and feeling a mix of satisfaction and disbelief. It was surreal. The woman who had caused so much daily stress was now facing the consequences of her repeated actions. The tow truck operator remained calm, patient, and professional, explaining every step as Karen continued to shout. Finally, after what felt like hours compressed into a tense 15 minutes, her vehicle was lifted and secured on the tow bed. Karen stomped back to her house, furious, while I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. The fire lane, the law, and careful documentation had worked together to restore order and enforce boundaries. This was more than a personal victory. It was a reminder that defiance has limits when the law is clear and applied consistently. By the end of the day, the neighborhood buzzed with stories about the incident. Karen's stunt had backfired spectacularly, and for the first time, her behavior had visible consequences. The county had proven that rules aren't optional, and my daily ordeal with a morning gate blocker was finally nearing closure. But this story isn't over yet. Karen had one last trick up her sleeve, and it was one I never saw coming. Days after her SUV was towed, the neighborhood seemed quieter, but I knew Karen wasn't done. She had a reputation for stubbornness that bordered on obsession, and I braced myself for whatever she might try next. Sure enough, the following morning, I noticed something unusual. A stack of legal-looking papers taped to my gate. My heart sank. Had she found a loophole, some technicality to challenge the county? Or was this just another attempt to intimidate me? I carefully retrieved the documents and scanned through them. As it turned out, she had filed an appeal, claiming the fire lane designation violated her property rights and that towing her vehicle constituted harassment. It was audacious, but I wasn't intimidated. I had meticulously documented every violation with photos, videos, and timestamps. The county had all the evidence needed. I immediately forwarded everything to the inspector handling her case. It was clear. No amount of legal posturing could override the clear violations she had committed. Over the next week, the county held hearings, reviewed my evidence, and even interviewed neighbors who had witnessed her behavior. The process was thorough but fair. Meanwhile, Karen's frustration became more visible. She was seen pacing in front of her house, talking on the phone, and apparently trying to rally support from anyone willing to defend her defiance. But her narrative was crumbling. Her own friends started whispering that she had gone too far. Finally, the county made their ruling. Karen's appeal was denied. She was required to pay fines for each violation, and the fire lane rules were reaffirmed. Additionally, any future obstruction of the driveway would result in immediate towing, without further warnings. For the first time, I felt a sense of closure. The daily stress, the early morning confrontations, the endless tension, it had all led to this moment. The law had enforced boundaries, and Karen had no choice but to comply. The neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief. My mornings were no longer interrupted, and I could finally enjoy the simple act of leaving my property, without fear of confrontation. But beyond personal convenience, the story carried a broader lesson. Persistence, patience, and clear documentation can hold even the most defiant people accountable. The county's involvement reminded everyone that rules exist for a reason, and violations, no matter how bold, have consequences. As I reflect on this ordeal, I realize it was about more than a blocked gate. It was about asserting rights, standing up to unreasonable behavior, and letting the law ensure fairness. Karen may have tried to dominate the street, but in the end, order prevailed, and my driveway, my mornings, and my sanity were finally restored. The next time someone thinks they can ignore the rules, remember, the law isn't just a suggestion. It's the ultimate backup plan. If you enjoyed watching Karen get what she deserved, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more wild HOA stories. Don't forget to like this video and comment below. What would you have done if she blocked your driveway?